National League Central Division Preview. I am here with my good friend and baseball fanatic, Sean, as you see here, Big Sean. Follow him at Cardinal Nation Junkie. One of the best guys to talk baseball with. So who other than Sean to bring on today to break down the National League Central? We're going to be going through a lot of teams this year. This is something that I love to do. My name is also Alexi Deep Pockets. People should know who I am when I put this video out. But I'm really looking forward to sharing more content this year for all of you people who enjoy baseball. And if you need help with it betting wise or just to know about specific teams, I'm going to help you with that this year. And I'm going to have Sean with me throughout that time. So Sean, thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to breaking down the National League Central today and discussing some of our favorite teams, players, etc. How are you feeling today? What are you most excited for this baseball season?
How you doing, man? How you doing? I'm excited for the start of the year. You know, the winter is a tough month. A tough few months. I can only try to force myself to like football for so long. I when I watch the Super Bowl, the second it ends, the first thing I think about is, all right, let's go. Let's have the real sports start here in a few months. And then everyone gets invited to spring training and you start hearing about all the players. And my favorite time of the year is when I get to watch, little tidbits of this pitcher facing this guy. Like I saw like Garrett Cole facing Aaron Judge. I saw Paul Skeens facing Tommy Pham. I saw just some random, tidbits online. So I'm excited. The big thing with us is fantasy baseball. I'm ready to go into the year and win another fantasy championship for baseball. And of course, number one thing this year, my Cardinals. They're gonna have a surprising year. There's gonna be an interesting year. It'll be a big year in terms of the direction of the team. So I'm excited to see, good or bad, how that goes. But man, this is the funnest time of the year. I think, February going into March Madness, followed up by the start of the baseball season.
Yeah, definitely. It's an exciting time. College basketball is in full swing, going down to the wire. We're going to have March Madness soon, but nothing better than good weather coming, spring training, and then, of course, opening day. Nothing really beats opening day when you've got all the teams playing and your favorite team is back in action. So looking forward to a fun baseball year. I can't wait for it. We're going to break down the Central Division today. And as you see below here, I've got the division odds. So we're going to give you all of our thoughts on these teams, what we like, what we dislike, where to look for some value in the betting terms too. So we'll try to give you as much information as possible. What we are doing here is because we love to do this. We love baseball. We've been watching baseball since we were young, and we want to help people out who may not know as much about baseball, or maybe you are a big baseball fan and you just want to get a different perspective. So that's what we're here to do today, and we're really looking forward to it. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's start talking some baseball. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And of course, everyone knows the Pittsburgh Pirates are led by their phenom starting pitcher, and that's Paul Skeens. So they have a good rotation. We see here they've got big-time pitchers, Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller. And what I'm thinking here is I like the pitching, but I don't love the offense. And I'm going to bring up a projection here for their projected lineup, and we'll dig deeper into the Pirates and what we expect from them this season. But you would think here, let me pull this up to share my screen. You would think that this Pirates lineup is probably not going to be too great. And before I jumped on this YouTube live with Sean, I had kind of remembered it, but I totally forgot that Cardinals legend Tommy Pham will be leading off for the Pittsburgh Pirates this season. And that kind of tells me all I need to know. Look, I'm not going to dog the Pirates here, but Tommy Pham leading off for you, it just doesn't do it for me. Andrew McCutchen hitting cleanup. This is a team who I think is going in somewhat of the right direction. You've got a solid rotation led by your great pitcher, Paul Skeens, but that lineup just doesn't do it for me. And so I'm not a huge fan of this Pirates team. I think they could have done a little bit more to improve the offense. And I think they're going in somewhat of a direction of more build up the pitchers, have somewhat of a mediocre to hopefully bust out offense. And I just don't see it with them. So projections have them on Petcoda at currently last place at 74.4 wins. That's their simulation for this year. And the books have them at 76. So I don't know. I'm not too big of a fan of this Pirates team. We'll talk a little bit more about players and everything about it. But Sean, what do you think of the Pirates this year? Am I wrong about not liking the direction they're going, at least for 2025?
No, and I'll be honest, I don't know what direction the Pirates have been going for the last decade. I really, I think it would be a bummer to be a fan of that organization. They don't capitalize on anything. They don't spend any money. It's got to be frustrating seeing, good players after good players come up, do well. Some of them do well, and then eventually traded. I mean, you look at a guy like Garrett Cole, that type of guy should have been a Pirate his whole career. And I mean, that's basically how it's been for at least 10 to 15 years now. I couldn't agree more. I'm worried about that offense is the big thing. You look at a guy like Ke'Bryan Hayes, that was supposed to be the guy for that team. He was a top 5 prospect a few years ago. Now he's, borderline just a role guy, almost a bench guy. He still has great defense over there at third, but I'm looking, his last season OPS was 570. That's not going to get it done. That's pretty pathetic. Even O'Neal Cruz, who is going to be their, probably best offensive player this year. He's 7th in strikeouts last year. That's kind of the big topic we need to go over, is him transitioning into center field, which I think is another thing that may affect, the way he hits this year. Do you think he's going to be able to go out there and, play a full year at center field and perform well the whole year?
That's the biggest thing. I don't. And we see so many injuries from players in the outfield. Now you're going to bring a guy like O'Neal Cruz to center field. Yes, they did it last year in late August, but a guy like him, I think, could definitely be typical to injury prone. Look at Mike Trout. He's already moving to right field now this season. Yeah. The Angels are finally realizing, okay, let's not put our star player in center field. We know he's a great player, generational type player, and we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to risk that type of injury. So, yeah, that does give me some concern. O'Neal Cruz in center field, sure, he can track ground. He's going to make the plays for you, but is he going to be able to sustain an entire season in center? I think there's a little bit of a concern for this Pirates team. So
you look up the middle, they don't have any established catcher whatsoever. O'Neal Cruz, brand new to the position, high strikeout guy, injury prone guy. You look at Isaiah Keener-Falefa, going to start for them at short. Oh man, I don't know. I can't see their offensive and their position players doing enough. Even if a guy like Paul Skeens goes down at any point, they could just go on a horrible stretch, I feel like, this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know we were wanting to talk about some potential breakout players for the Pirates. One guy that I had on my list is the second baseman. That's Nick Gonzalez. He was the 7th overall pick in 2020. The potential is there. He's not going to get the home run power for you, but I think he finished the season pretty strong. When I was doing some research on Nick Gonzalez, he was getting extra base hits that weren't home runs. He was getting a lot of doubles, a couple triples, and a couple stolen bases too. So I think if there's somebody in this lineup that needs to step up this year, that's not, of course, Ke'Bryan Hayes and O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds. Those are like the established hitters in their lineup. I think Nick Gonzalez, they need somewhat of a good season from Nick Gonzalez. And you see right there, he's projected for 2.6 WAR. And I believe that was the 3rd highest in the offensive categories and all the hitters. So, yeah, that's kind of my little breakout hitter to come out this year, hopefully have a big season. Sean, any thoughts about him, or just is there another player that's on your radar for this Pittsburgh team?
I'm kind of staying in that infield. Nick Gonzalez needs to have a good year. Pirates want any chance at winning 80, 85 games, making a wild card this year, they're going to need Nick Gonzalez. And actually, I'm really liking a guy, that's Spencer Horwitz, who they got from – actually, it was a Toronto trade to Cleveland and then to the Pirates. He actually projects really high on base guy. It looks like they're going to start him at first this year. I don't know if he's projected to start the year at first. He might be a first baseman, might fill in at second, depending on Nick Gonzalez, maybe DH. Really high on base guy, and they're going to need all those infielders to step up. I don't see Connor Falefa being able to do enough to hit playing shortstop. So if the Pirates are going to do anything, I think they're going to need Nick Gonzalez. They're going to need Horwitz. They're going to need Hayes. They're going to need Cruz, and they're going to need Reynolds to stay healthy and have good, strong, full seasons. That really only Reynolds has really been the only one to do that.
Yep, no doubt about it. I'm looking forward to seeing how your breakout with Horwitz can do possibly this year. Yeah, looking at the numbers, it looks good for him in terms of the projection. So hopefully he does well for this Pittsburgh team. And then just really quick, the rotation, I think we mentioned it. Paul Skeens leads the way. I hope for everything that he can just stay healthy. I mean, you want to see these guys stay healthy. At the end of the day, it's almost impossible for these pitchers to stay healthy in this era of the Major League Baseball seasons. But you really want to see Paul Skeens stay healthy. You want to see the best pitchers in baseball do their thing. And if he's leading the way, obviously they're going to be in every game when he's pitching. But you've got Mitch Keller and Jared Jones. I always have had concerns with Mitch Keller. I just feel like he's never been consistent. You're going to get 4 to 5 really good starts from Mitch Keller, and then all of a sudden he gets bombed for another 5 to 6 games. So I think Mitch Keller just needs to take that extra leap in terms of finding consistency. And then Jared Jones, another young guy who has a lot of potential. I think there's still a lot to know about there. But, yeah, I mean, if there's any positive from this Pittsburgh team, I definitely think it's the rotation. I think with those players, 1, 2, and 3, if they're healthy, if they're doing their thing, they could win quite a bit of games. I just don't see it happening this year because when you put it in full perspective, I don't like the offense. I don't love the bullpen. I think this is a team who projects about 73 to 74 wins. I would take their under. Sean, what would you say? Over under 76 wins for the Pirates?
Yeah, well, the big thing, Keller and Jones, and I'd say Keller, you could argue that last year was maybe the best year we've seen out of Mitch Keller, getting up there almost 30 now. Still, ERA over 4. He had the strikeouts. I would love Mitch Keller more as a number 3. I just don't think the rotation can hold up. So I'm going to take under 76 as well. That's that. I don't think just the thing with these teams, and you got to think about the over under on the full season wins, is there something that could pop? Is there something that could change? I think even if some guys overperform, I don't like the culture in Pittsburgh. I don't like, they're definitely not, let's say they're 500 at the break. You think they're going to trade for a guy? I don't think so. So they're not looking to spend, and they have 2 fireballer pitchers, which is kind of the biggest risk of all. So I don't see how they're going to get to 80 wins. 76 is a good number, but I'm going to go under that also.
Well, last thing about the Pirates here, Sean, I think the obvious here, if we had to choose an MVP from the team, we're going to choose Paul Skeens. Is there anyone else you'd even give consideration to with this Pirates team?
I remember we were playing the show and we were talking about some under-the-radar guys that could come up, be all-stars. Who's going to get an MVP vote from this team? I'm looking at this current group of guys. I'm not even going to say Brian Reynolds. There's no one on this team that will get an MVP vote. I'm going to go ahead and promise you that 100%. O'Neal Cruz, I don't see any path for that guy to play a full season. He'd have to play, 50-80% better than he's ever played before. And I just don't see anything like that's going to happen.
For sure. Yeah, you'd like to see a guy like O'Neal Cruz find a way to not strike out as much. His projections for striking out is, I don't know if you saw his strikeout percentage on there, but it's very high, and it's in above the 170s from what I'm seeing here. So
coming up to the minors, really fast guy. Everyone talked about him, 5-tool guy, but you can't lead the league in strikeouts, and he only had 22 stolen bases last year. I mean, I know that's you don't want to kill a guy for that. You don't look at that all the time, but he's not getting on base enough, and he's not doing anything else outside of his bat to really make himself, putting the Pirates in a better position. So I don't know. I don't like pretty much anything about that Pirates offense this year.
Absolutely. We'll see what happens, but that's a little preview to the Pittsburgh Pirates 2025. We should see how they do as the season gets along. It is February 20th, by the way, so a lot of things can change between now and opening day, but probably not too much. I would anticipate there might be a spring training injury. You never know. There's injuries that happen from now until spring training, the end of spring training, and then, of course, in the midseason. You can never predict injuries, but we'll see what happens with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Let's move on to the next team on our list here. That is the Cincinnati Reds, projected over-under at 78.5, of course, led by Elly De La Cruz, the stud shortstop, who I love to have a big season. We'll talk about Elly De La Cruz, but they're getting Matt McLain back. That's a huge bat to add to the lineup in terms of what is his potential. And they're led by, of course, Hunter Green. Hunter Green, the guy who hopefully can stay healthy for that rotation. We've always seen his potential and what he has to lead that rotation, and his stuff is just incredible. So the Cincinnati Reds coming into the season, also, we have to note, they are going to be with Terry Francona. He was the offseason hire, which I think was a great hire. You want to get a veteran guy like him who knows what he's doing. He's been in baseball for a long time. I think Francona will be a great addition to the Cincinnati organization. Sean, I'll let you start with this one. How do you feel about the Cincinnati Reds coming into the season? Do you feel good? Do you feel bad? Do you feel like, yeah, it's right about the number? What are you feeling about the Reds?
So it's funny. Last year, going into the year, I saw a lot of Brewers are going to win the division. I saw a lot of Cardinals are going to come back after their terrible year from 2 years ago. And I didn't see a lot of Reds hype at the beginning of last year. And I thought that was a little crazy. I was like, they've got Cruz and Steer and McLain and that Noel V. Marte, who got popped for the PED suspension last year, came back. Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo. They had pretty much the biggest explosion of young talent there in the NL Central the last 2 years. And I thought to myself, that's a pretty scary team. And then last year, there's kind of some things. Obviously, Elly De La Cruz took off. That is exactly what you want to see if you're a Reds fan. Hunter Green definitely had his best year, which I think that's kind of what they thought with him coming out of college. I think, man, Hunter Green, I remember last year, I would watch Hunter Green. I would watch a game in the seventh inning. He's still throwing 102 in the seventh inning. I was like, Jesus, this is the type of guy that I wish like the Cardinals could trade for. But one, I think losing Matt McLain last year really hurt them. They kind of had no one to play second. They had a lot of options for outfield, but they couldn't all put it together. Fraley, on-base guy, he was injured last year. They don't really have a true center fielder. TJ Friedel is okay, but he's never going to be the hitter that you want in the outfield. And then Spencer Steer is kind of the guy that I think at the beginning of last year I thought was going to explode. But he had, one of the worst second halves in all of baseball. I'm looking now. He completely fell off a cliff after the break. He hit 198, had OPS under 640. After the break, I think I'm kind of worried about their outfield. And other than Elly De La Cruz, I'm also worried about Matt McLain coming back from a big injury, having to play second every day. And then Encarnacion Strand, who knows? That's kind of one of the other biggest mysteries on this team. Candelario, I don't know if he's going to step up in the infield. With Elly De La Cruz, if if he turns into a Mookie Betts, you never know with this offense. That could turn this offense, take it to a new level that I'm not sure we've seen with the Reds in the last couple of years. But I'm overall a little worried that the offense, which I thought had these young pieces that were set to explode, I am worried about their entire production on the season. Not to mention, same with O'Neal Cruz. I think Ellie De La Cruz, high risk of injury also, is going to steal a lot of bases, going to try to make a lot of crazy plays. Oh my God, I don't want to think of that offense without Ellie De La Cruz. But and again, Hunter Green coming off his biggest workload since playing professional baseball. So, Lodolo, he went from someone who, could have been, I'm not saying a Cy Young candidate, but someone, a workhorse for that team. He kind of looks just like a number 3, number 4 guy, and I'm worried about him getting hurt this year too.
Yeah, the Reds are interesting to me. All the reasons you said are great points. McLean, you always have to worry about and wonder how a player coming back from an injury is going to do. So Matt McLean sitting there, number 3 in the order. Jake Fraley hitting 5th. I don't know. That doesn't really look good to me. But I will say, I do like the addition of Gavin Lux. They traded for Gavin Lux in the offseason. And I feel like a change of scenery, a hitter's ballpark could really do some good things for Gavin Lux. So that is a player that I'm looking for to have not to say a breakout season, but just, a much better season than we have ever seen him have with the Dodgers. So I do like Gavin Lux. I love that addition. They also added Austin Hayes, and they traded Jonathan India away for Brady Singer, which was an interesting swap.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, I know we talked about Hunter Green. I know we've talked about a little bit of that lineup, but do you feel like Brady Singer is going to do well in a very hitter-friendly ballpark? I mean, I'm not loving that trade there, man.
I'm pretty worried. I don't think of Singer as someone who can come in and upgrade a rotation. He's like a perfect, if they need someone for innings, I think he's the type of guy to do it. Man, I don't know. And he doesn't strike any people out. That's the problem. He's not going to be like Hunter Green, where you're going to have 200 strikeouts and you're going to keep everything on the ground and everything's going to be hard to hit. Brady Singer, I mean, I think especially if their outfield defense isn't good this year, or Spencer Steer, again, something that he's been pretty bad at is left field, which, as you know, Cincinnati's a great right-handed hitter, park friendly for right-handed hitters. So I think Singer is a good depth piece, but I totally agree. I don't think he's gonna make any difference whatsoever in that rotation. I think everything's going to be on Hunter Green in that rotation.
And kind of like what you said about Ellie De La Cruz, if Hunter Green finds significant time on the injured list, that rotation, Andrew Abbott is about the number 3. I'm looking here at Roto Champ. As you see, I'm sharing my screen here with Andrew Abbott, the number 3, Nick Martinez, the number 4, and where's Nick Lodolo? Where's the potential that we've all seen Nick Lodolo? It just never seems like that guy can figure it out either, but he's got the stuff to do it. I'm a little skeptical of this team. Like I said, I love the addition of Gavin Lux. I think he can provide some nice offense there. There's a couple home run hitters there with Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McLean, if they can stay healthy. But overall, I'm not feeling great about this Reds team. I think, again, they're sitting right around an average season. 78.5, 79 wins could do it for them. But is that really something you would want to see from the Cincinnati team as a Reds fan? So, yeah, I'm not as high on this Reds team either. I think if I had to take the over-under here, I think this is really sharp, though. I think 78.5 is a great number. And I'd probably lean slightly, just very slightly, to the over. Like, I think it's going to come around right around 78.5. I think 79 or 80 could do it for them. But that has to be with a lot of things going right. And I think we had it over here too with the bullpen. We had the numbers up on the bullpen. It looked kind of ugly. I think Alexis Diaz is probably their number 1 guy in there. But outside of that, I don't know if there's a lot of guys in there that you could really look to and say, yeah, these are shutdown guys. You can really trust them. So I think overall, Reds are probably a pretty mediocre team. They're going to win a lot of games with high-scoring games, but I think we could see them giving up a lot of runs too from their pitching.
I love the Lux pick because I think another super highly touted prospect. I think being with the Dodgers, he never got any chance whatsoever to ever be a guy on that team. And kind of right that year he was coming into his own. I remember they traded for Betts and Freeman, and they kind of turned into this powerhouse offense. And he's never been able to just have. I think he was always overshadowed in LA, and I kind of like that he's got something to prove. I think he's probably going to be coming to the year pissed off, and I think that's a really good pick. And actually, the guy I like this year for the Reds is that Tyler Stevenson. I think their catcher is actually one of the best hitting catchers in the National League. I think it's funny. He had a terrible year last year. He had dealing with a bunch of injuries, but this past season in 2024, he's actually had the third best OPS out of any catcher with 400 plate appearances, which was shocking. He was kind of one of those sleeper guys in fantasy last year. I think if the Reds are going to hit that number, they're going to get to 500, they're going to get to 85 wins. To me, they're kind of in that same area as the Pirates. If they're going to hit, they need those role player guys like Stevenson and Lux and Fraley and Friedel. And then you need Elly De La Cruz to be that stud guy every day for your lineup.
Definitely.
If I had to pick, again, it's funny you say that. When I saw that number, I said, "Oh, they're going to win 78 games." So I don't know. So I guess I'm gonna take the under on that.
Yeah.
Funny enough, when you take these season long bets, you got to think of, these guys are going to be playing each other a lot. So, if you're going to take the risk and take some Reds or Pirates season long bet, you got to map out how they're going to do against each other, and then maybe take your bet on that.
For sure. And something I wanted to point out here, which I thought was interesting. So a lot of these sabermetric, analytical websites, they have standings of their projections. So based off like all the player data, what they brought in from the season, what they lost, all of that is brought together. And it's really interesting because, and these aren't always accurate. Let me just start by saying that they're not always accurate on their projections, but Pacoda has the Reds at 74 wins. And Fangraphs has 78, which I think is really interesting because they both would have them going under the win total that the books are offering to the public. And I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Do you have any thoughts on
Well, I'll ask you this question.
Yeah.
If you, unlike the Pirates, do you think if the Reds exploded, Elly De La Cruz, MVP candidate, Hunter Green, healthy all year, do you think that team, that front office, is going to take a chance? Let's say they're in first place by 5 games on June 30th. Do you think that, they're going to not go all out, not trade, make some crazy trade, but how much faith do you have in the Reds to actually want to compete and try to go to the playoffs this year?
That's a great question. I see it a lot more with the Reds than I would with the Pirates. So same situation. If the Pirates were in that situation, you said it earlier, I don't think they would go all in and find a stud that's going to improve their team. They're going to go out there and they're going to find a number 3, a number 4 pitcher that's just going to be like, okay, great, you did something at the deadline. But I could see the Reds doing something if they're having career years from Elly De La Cruz and Hunter Green, and they start out on fire, they go up 10, 12 games above 500, and then at the All-Star break, if they're in first place, I would really hope they would, and I think I would have more confidence in them doing it than I would the Pirates. So I think they would. I think they would go. Not that I would say all out, but I think they would do something to at least improve some area that they're lacking.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Good stuff there on the Reds. Nice little breakdown there. Is there any other players that I know we went through a lot of them. Now, actually, let's talk about this. We said MVP. I think obviously the clear cut is Elly De La Cruz. And I actually, from a betting perspective, I think there's some really good value with him to win the MVP at 20-1. That's what I saw as his best odds on all the sports books across the board. 20-1. At this point, Ohtani, the odds just are not really great. You're going to, it's plus 140 for Ohtani to win the MVP. I'm good. I don't need to do that. Sure, he might win it again, but I want to take a guy that has a lot of potential and a guy like Elly De La Cruz who's going to steal bases, he's going to hit home runs, hopefully, and he's that exciting player that people like to watch. So I think there's good value there. I might actually put that bet in before the season starts for Ellie De La Cruz MVP odds.
And if the Reds come out, get a wild card team, win the NL Central, even if he's not having some just incredible season, I think he's going to get most of the credit for leading that team because he's just such an exciting player, young player. He is the heart and soul of that team. So, if the Dodgers win the division again, let's say Ohtani and Cruz have a lot of similar numbers, everyone's going to go to Cruz instead of Ohtani. So, if that were what it came down to. So those type of guys are great value in MVP.
Great point. The Reds will start off the season at home this year. Just to give a quick preview on that, they're going to start at home against the San Francisco Giants. Then they'll play the Rangers. They play a couple of division games. It looks like they're going to start their first division series against the Brewers on the road, and then at home against the Pirates, and then at home against the St. Louis Cardinals. So 3 different series against different division teams. We'll see how the Reds do, but that's a little preview for the Cincinnati Reds.
Coming from a Cardinals fan, I will say for $12, you can go to the Cincinnati Reds Stadium, Great American Ballpark. I don't know if that's still what it's called, to be honest with you. You go there. There's a place in the back. You go around the bleachers in the back. There's all you can drink sodas, unlimited popcorn. You get 2 bags of peanuts, and it's only for $12 a person. And it's a beautiful ballpark right on the lake. Smokestacks. It is a great place to go watch a game. So if you're a road team going into Cincinnati, I highly recommend.
Great. No, I've never been to Great American. I'd love to go there. I would love to get up there for a game. And I've heard it's really nice, for a game. The stadium's really nice. There's, a nice little river right around the stadium too. So, yeah, I'd love to go to a game in Cincinnati. The only division, surprisingly, of all of the teams in this division, and we're obviously Cardinals fans, I've only been to Wrigley Field of all these division teams. I've never been to Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Milwaukee. But I've been to quite a bit of other ones, so I need to hit some of these division teams in the Central. All right, awesome stuff there on the Cincinnati Reds. Let's move on to the Milwaukee Brewers. Milwaukee Brewers, who won the division last year, they almost feel like they have a Tampa Bay Ray model to them in a sense. Like they go out there, they try to find these random pitchers, they try to bank off these young hitters, and it's been working for them. They don't want to pay some of their guys. Yes, they'll pay Christian Yelich, but look, they traded Devin Williams away, and they just didn't sign Willy Adames. So those are 2 key players that they're going to be without going into 2025. No back end of the bullpen closer in Devin Williams, which almost felt like impossible at times to try to score against him. And then Willy Adames, a huge part of that lineup, who put up a ton of numbers last season offensively. So the Brewers are an interesting team, though. I'm just kind of looking through what they have here. I've never been a Freddie Peralta fan. I think he just has way too many inconsistencies to him in a way. And I'm not saying that he's completely comparable, but Sean, I think you might agree with me because we are Cardinals fans. In a way, he's kind of like Carlos Martinez, where he's got great stuff, but just never can find entire consistency. And he has those blow-up games. So he's the number 1 in the rotation. Not sure I love that too much. I just started sharing. Can you see here the Brewers? I'm going to pull that up here on my stage. So yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at the lineup. I do love William Contreras. I think he's a great piece that they added a couple years ago in that trade. They added Nestor Cortez. I never really loved him. Aaron Savali is an interesting one, but just looking at the rotation, I think it's pretty mid, and the lineup has potential. We'll get into the lineup, but my first reaction is don't love it. But as we dig deeper, Sean, I'll let you talk a little bit here. What are your thoughts, 2025 Milwaukee Brewers?
Well, it's crazy. Last year, I remember our sleepers last year. I said, I said Paul Goldschmidt because he's on a contract year, and I said Willy Adames, who's on a contract year. And
you did. I remember that.
Okay. One of those were right. Let's, anyway, we'll get to that when we talk about the Yankees preview. But Willy Adames was probably their biggest impact bat besides Contreras and probably Yelich last year. So that's a big loss. But the crazy thing about the Brewers is last year they had this explosion of all these new guys. I mean, at one point last year, and I'm a Cardinal fan, so I'm following my division pretty close. I mean, there was a point in the middle of the year where I'd watch a game and they would talk about Sal Frelick and Blake Perkins and Jackson Cheerio and Garrett Mitchell and Joey Ortiz. And I remember Joey Ortiz was that guy in fantasy who had like a hot month. And that Bryce Terang. And I'm just like, who are these guys? I mean, they just kind of had this explosion of position player depth and crazy explosion. They turned out to be probably the best offense in the NL Central last year with all these new guys. Yelich had a great year. Contreras probably had his best year, which that was kind of surprising to me. That guy is man, he is really good. I cannot believe they got him in that trade 2 years ago with the Braves. I cannot believe that. But it's interesting. It almost reminded me of the Reds 2 years ago when they just had all these new young guys that I couldn't even keep track of. But I think two things. One, I wonder how all these guys, these sophomore year guys, are going to do. Two, I think at the same time, I think Jackson Cheerio is maybe the real deal, which worries me as a Cardinal fan. So it's kind of this, I don't have a strong take either way on the offense. I'm worried that if two or three of those guys really become above average hitters, they already play such great defense. Joey Ortiz, really good. Bryce Terang, really good. Cheerio could be a stud corner outfielder here. He's only 20 years old. Only 20 years old right now. Doesn't turn 21, I think, till next month or April. So I have this. I think there's this changing of the guard with the Brewers, where if everything goes right, I'm really worried. But if maybe 2, 3, 4 of these guys have a sophomore slump, if Cheerio doesn't take the next step, if Yelich if he has one of his more poor years than last 2 years he's been, the Christian Yelich of old. But I could see him, being a notch worse this year, especially offensively. He doesn't move the same way. I don't love their rotation. So that's the thing that is kills it a little bit for me. But their defense is so good that some of those guys in the rotation could really help. And then the question I want to pose to you is, what about Brandon Woodruff? What are we thinking about Brandon Woodruff? I think he's kind of the whole make or break of that rotation. I think if he can step up and actually have the year he had 2 or 3 years ago, then that rotation turns into something that's actually a little scary. I think he needs to step up, be their number one. Freddie Peralta, try to limit the walks the best he can. I think if both those guys can stay healthy the whole year, their rotation could be enough, especially with that defense. But I don't know. It's right there for me. I think they're a scary team if everything goes right, which I don't say that about the Reds or the Pirates. But I don't think I can sit here and say that everything is going to go right, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anytime, like I said at the beginning, if you lose 2 key pieces, there's always going to be question marks, at least for me, from what I've seen when teams lose key players. And Adames was a huge piece of that team last season, offensively especially. So when you take a guy like him out of the lineup, yeah, you're replacing Ortiz with him. He's a good defender, but if you're not going to get that same offensive production, in my opinion. But yeah, you mentioned the defense is great. Bryce Terang, that's a guy I want to see have a better offensive season. I think we've noticed his splits against lefties and righties are kind of what make or break him. But if he can be, somewhat decent at the bottom of that order, they don't need him to be a top guy in it. They already have a couple hitters who can be that part. But Bryce Terang to me is a big piece. But you also mentioned it, man, Brandon Woodruff. I think if Brandon Woodruff comes back to his form, or at least close to it, doesn't need to be the guy he was 2-3 years ago. But if he can be somewhat of a just stud starting pitcher, try to lead that rotation as much as he can, that's going to make this team pretty damn scary. And so I think I'm a little higher on the Brewers than maybe some people are. And another part of that is look at that bullpen I have here on Fangraphs. Look at that bullpen they have there. I think
Yeah.
a big reason why they were okay with letting Williams walk is because what they found in Miguel. Miguel was a great setup man last season. He was a guy who didn't let a lot of teams score in big crucial situations. Piamps also was pretty solid for them. There's just I think that's what is the way baseball has changed. You're not going to have these starters go 7-8 innings. You don't need that anymore. You need a very good deep bullpen, and I think that is something the Brewers have here. And that's what I think for me. The offense can just do what it needs to do, but the bullpen is what I like the most about this team. So yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on the Brewers. Don't love them. I think I'm with you too. If the offense is just not clicking as much, if they have some problems in the rotation, that could be bad long term. But I do think this is a good, not great Brewers team. I think 82.5 is another good number. I would take the over with the Brewers here in the season.
Yeah, I think this is the type of team that if they exploded, they won 90 games. I'm not going to be shocked. Whereas Pirates or Reds, if they're winning 90 games, something went right, something exploded. Ellie De La Cruz put up a 10-WAR season. I don't know what would have to happen for them to win 90 games. But, I mean, the Brewers just kind of have just enough depth. I mean, even the 7th, 8th, 9th guy in that order is a real guy. That's a real starting player. They all proved it last year. They can play in the majors. They're all under 26. All those guys we named are 26 or younger. Jackson Cherrio's only 20. Frelick, Mitchell, Turang, Ortiz, they're all under 26, which could be it could not work in their favor with the experience, but those are guys stepping into their prime. So who knows who could explode out of that group. It's funny kind of just how lucky they got into all those guys kind of blossoming into starters at the MLB level, which, that doesn't happen, but if you told me right now Woodruff and Peralta survived most of the year, Cheerio doesn't take a big step back like some of the sophomore guys last year, then I love them competing for the division, 85 wins, 90 wins, but if I'm a betting man, I don't know where I sit. I think that is the perfect number. If I had to put money on it, which you're the betting guy, I'm not the betting guy as much. I'm gonna see if I could take the under and see how the year goes. But I don't have a lot of heart in that. That's just kind of wishful thinking, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. I like the breakdown, at least for what your thoughts are going into the season with this Brewers and what their potential is and where they could lack in certain areas. And one other guy we didn't really mention, and I think sometimes gets forgotten at times, is Christian Yelich. I mean, it seems like projections have him as mostly a DH this season just because of the injuries he has had over the years. So, try to put those younger guys in the outfield, maybe better defensively and keep them away from injuries. I'm sure he'll play quite a bit of outfield at times too. So if they can get a full season of Yelich, I mean, we saw what they did last year without him and other years when he's hurt. So if Yelich can maybe take a little bit of a step back from playing defense and limiting his injury potential, then I think that could also help this Brewers team get to where they want.
The other thing about the Brewers, and the thing that's just kind of led the charge just over the last 5 years, what they've won 3 or 4 divisions just in the last 5 years, they have guys that everyone's a little fast. Everyone plays good defense. All these guys are fundamental guys. There's no, sporadic guy that you can't trust. There's some about that in terms of like the glue of a team. I think you even saw it with the Cardinals when they lost a little bit of their fundamentals. They started pushing guys into weird positions. A lot of their, it affects the defense and then it affects the pitching. It affects everything. I feel like those teams where you have just amazing depth where everyone is reliable. You have a 1 through 9 in your order. There's something about those teams that they just win more one-run games. They win more like extra inning late games. It's easier to come back and win later in the game. Everyone's a little more reliable. The pitchers all have a boost from those type of teams, and that's what's the scariest thing to me about the Brewers team this year.
Definitely good points all around on the Brewers there. looking again, just kind of giving the people here projected wins. So the books, that was the best number I found on whatever sports book I was looking at, 82.5 over under for the Brewers. Looking at Petcoda, they have the Brewers finishing at 80 and 81. So about average 500 or so. And on Fangraphs, I believe it was 81 as well, right about 81. Yeah, Fangraphs has them at 81 wins. So both of those websites have a average season coming from the Brewers. So I think that was interesting to see too when you look at everything. Now, is there anyone? Let's see. I'm making sure we're not missing anything. I know we talked about Jackson Cheerio. I know we talked about what we'd like to see from these players. Is there any other player that we haven't mentioned, or did we? I think we covered like the player to watch from each of our perspectives. Anything else you'd add about the Brewers before we move on to the next team?
The only thing, and again, as a Cardinal fan, I already harped on this. I mean, Jackson Cheerio, almost like an Ellie De La Cruz. I mean, if he turns into this, total, absolute, like Aaron Judge stud, that's really going to scare me. He literally was 20 years old last year, 2020 season, and I don't even think he had a poor start to the year. So he could come out. If you told me he put up like a 30-30 season this year, it's not going to surprise me, and that scares me a lot as a Cardinal fan.
Yeah, definitely does. Jackson Cheerio, one of the better young players in baseball. It should be exciting to see what he can do in this next full season if he can take that next step to being a good player in the majors. All right, great stuff on the Milwaukee Brewers and some breakdowns with them. Let's move on to the projected favorite to win the division, our rival, but we'll give you our honest thoughts on them. That's the Chicago Cubs. Chicago Cubs this year are coming in with a headliner of an offseason move. That's getting Kyle Tucker. That's a huge addition for them. They lost Cody Bellinger in the trade with the Yankees, but hey, they brought in Kyle Tucker, the stud from the Houston Astros, who, if can stay healthy, has a lot of potential to lead that team to great things in 2025. They also tried to bring in Alex Bregman, which I thought was interesting. They were kind of a team that seemed to be going in a direction that I don't know if a lot of people would have expected for the Cubs to go this offseason, but they tried apparently to get Alex Bregman too. Couldn't get that down, but they just signed Justin Turner. I thought that was an interesting acquisition over the last couple days. I don't know. I'm looking at this Cubs team. I see their projected wins are at 80, 86.5. I know Petcoda is very high on them. Petcoda has them at like 90, 91 wins. I'm looking at this team here. I think there is a lot of potential, and I do agree from a roster standpoint, they probably should be the favorite of everyone. But again, I'm gonna go right back to the rotation, man. I'm a little worried about the rotation. We saw Imanaga last year was incredible. And, I hate to bring this up, but we tend to see in the second or third year of some of these guys who come over from Japan, they don't have that same consistency. They tend to get injured at a certain point in the season. And I think that could be something that happens. I'm not trying to predict an injury here, but I think, can you truly rely on Imanaga to give you a full season here? And that would be one of my biggest question marks. Justin Steele, a great number 2 there. If all healthy, that's a great 1-2 option right there if you have it. But if you go deeper in the rotation, you've got Jamison, Taillon, Assad, and Boyd. That doesn't do enough for me to be super strong. So I don't know. I'm not as high on this Cubs team as maybe some people are. I do think they're good. I don't think they're great. I don't think they should be like the absolute clear favorite to win the division by a wide margin, like some of the books are telling us. So yeah, that's my biggest concern is somewhat the pitching if it can even stay healthy. But Sean, let's discuss Cubs. What are your feelings for 2025, the Chicago Cubs?
Yeah, what I learned about 5 or 6 years ago, which kind of blew my mind. I heard it on an interview, like on a live game interview. The baseball that they use in Korea, in Japan, KBO, in the Japanese league, it is a different size baseball than what they use in MLB. I think it's like millimeter difference, but the seams are also different. So ever since I heard that, I've thought about all these guys that get hurt. You see it with Ohtani. You've seen it with Yu Darvish when he first started. You saw it with Kodai Senga just last year. He had shoulder issues, and then he had the calf issue. But all these guys, most of them have some sort of shoulder or forearm injury in their first couple years coming into MLB. And I think it has something to do with the size of the ball. It could just be some conspiracy theorist. I don't know. But I don't think there's a pitcher from Korea or Japan that hasn't had some sort of injury struggle in their first 3 years coming over to MLB. Again, I don't want to predict some injury, but I mean, if you told me that you're expecting 180 innings out of Imanaga, I'm gonna take all the money I have in my savings account and my 401k, and I will bet the under on that. I'll tell you right now. So I think Justin Steele is more of a bounce back guy, which scares me as a Cardinal fan. Taillon and Assad, I think, are right there with those inning eater type of guy. They're right there with a Brady Singer type of pitcher. They, I could see them building up to 160 plus innings, having an ERA around 4. But is it going to shock me if they fall off a cliff and they have a 5.8 ERA and have an injury by mid-June? No, that's not going to surprise me at all. The big thing with the Cubs, as I say that, is I don't think if 2 or 3 of those guys, if Imanaga gets hurt and let's say Jamison Taillon either gets hurt or has some sort of performance issue, his strikeouts were way down last year, who is going to come into that rotation? That's the big thing. Nowadays in MLB, you need 6, 7, 8 starters who are average or better if you're going to actually win the division, go into the postseason. I was looking, everyone forgets, Kyle Hendricks pitched 130 innings last year. That's just completely gone now. Their top pitching prospect, a guy named Cade Horton, I saw he only pitched 34 innings last year in the minors with an ERA about 4.4. When I go to their MLB pipeline page, the Cubs, the only other pitcher on their entire prospect list, their top 15 prospect list, is in single A with like a 10 ERA. Where's the I see the Cubs, if they're going to be 500, if they're going to be, 10 games over 500 going into the break, I could see them trading for a pitcher. But where are those innings going to come from? I don't think any of these guys, including Steele, is going to step up, throw 200 innings. I don't see it. I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, I have the same concerns with you from the rotation. From an offensive perspective, just to get a little bit deeper into the offense, I think Kyle Tucker is a great addition. It's something that can really make this team good. Like if Kyle Tucker has the kind of season that we saw the last 2 years where he's putting up over 40 home runs and driving people in, hitting this is this could be a scary Cubs team if all clicks and all goes well. This is an offense that they're going to have that big bopper. I think he replaces Bellinger and makes this team a lot better than what they had with Bellinger. So you've got Pete Crow Armstrong in center, hitting wise, not great.
Great defensive player. Great defensive player. Reminds me of the Brewers. This Cubs position player team, a very good defense with a couple bigger bats. But what do you think about Pete Crow Armstrong? You think he can have that breakout type of year, or do you think he's still not quite the hitter that the Cubs want him to be?
I still am a little I'm looking at some of these projections here. They have him about 15 home runs, 68 RBIs, 30 walks, a lot of strikeouts. But look at those stolen bases. If he can get on base, 31 stolen bases, that's pretty damn good to have at the bottom of your lineup, to set up the top of the lineup when they come back up. So I don't think Armstrong, I'd be a little surprised if he hit over 15 home runs this season. I don't think the power numbers are necessarily there for him, but I think his biggest thing needs to be getting on base. So taking walks, getting singles. You don't need to go out there and try to hit home runs. And that's what I kind of hate in a way of how baseball has changed. Like I feel like in a way that's what some of these guys try to do. It's just home run or nothing in some cases. And there's just some players that aren't meant for that. So I would hope Pete Crow Armstrong doesn't take that kind of approach. But I think he could have a better offensive season. I just don't know if it's going to be to the projections that are showing here. And as always, man, the type of center field he plays, like he plays aggressive. He's going to go for balls. Always a chance for an injury. So you always got to hope for that. That doesn't happen either. So
you can tell how burned we've been in fantasy baseball with us, how often we're talking about injuries. I mean, it's insane, man.
It's inevitable, as unfortunate as it is to say it. And that's why literally we can say everything we want right here today about what we think about a team, a player, anything. We can say this team's going to do this because we like them because of that. But at the end of the day, it is truly, can this player stay healthy? Can overall as a team, can they stay healthy? Because that can derail a season for some of these teams. So, of course, we want to see the best potential for all these teams. But with all the fantasy baseball we've played, I mean, last year, I can't tell you the amount of guys that were just dropping like flies, especially pitchers. It was like your top 1 to 2, 3 round guys were automatically hurt by June or July. It was unfortunate.
Now, I like Suzuki, primarily being a DH. I think his outfield defense was something that they didn't love last year with Armstrong starting out there. And Ian Happ, man, I went to an Iowa Cubs game about 4 years ago. I think I Snapchatted you or sent you a picture. Ian Happ was leading off that game. I think he was hitting like 220 in AAA at Iowa Cubs. And I told my girlfriend, I said, yeah, that guy he like had a great first year with the Cubs, but now he's like a total bum. I mean, here he is, like 30 years old. I mean, he's going to start. He might lead off for this team. I mean, I don't have an opinion either way. I think he's actually one of those sneaky role player guys. I think if he hit 6th or 7th in that order, I think he would fit in just fine around Kyle Tucker there. But the offense, the only thing with Nico Horner and with Dansby Swanson is, okay, great defense, but are they going to have their peak years? I think both of them already had their best offensive years, especially Dansby Swanson. So I'm hoping as a Cardinal fan that they're both going to kind of just be pretty average hitting wise, but I don't know how they're going to do this year. Do you have any feeling on if Dansby Swanson's going to have another great year, or what do you think he'll do this year?
Yeah, I've never been the biggest Dansby Swanson fan. I think there's being what, the number one, he was the number 1 overall pick, right? When he got drafted by the Diamondback, but then traded to the Braves, I believe it was.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think with Dansby Swanson is you're going to get exactly what these numbers are showing you right here. About 18 home runs, 70 RBIs. He's going to strike out quite a bit. But when he goes in slumps, man, he goes in slumps. And that is something that does concern me about a player like him. I don't know, what does it have him here projected? And my lineup that I have here has him about 5th in the order. I mean, I don't know. I'm not the biggest Swanson fan. I could see him having a good season in this lineup now that you add in Kyle Tucker, but I could also see him being really inconsistent and having those times where, you're like, Dansby Swanson was a number 1 overall pick. We're not even getting a decent season out of him.
Yeah, I do like some of these role guys. I think, Michael Busch could step up, have a good offensive year. I do think that Ian Happ could be sneaky, and I'm worried that, man, we're going to talk about the Cardinals here, but it sucks to see that almost every other Central Division team has their stud, has their MVP guy, and the Cardinals don't. But and Kyle Tucker scares me, man. He's one of my favorite players to watch the last couple of years. Probably one of the most underrated players in all of baseball.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Kyle Tucker is awesome. I loved watching him in Houston, and I think that was, the Astros looking at it saying, look, we're not going to re-sign him. Might as well get something for him now before we lose him to free agency and we don't get anything in return. So I guess some smart move on Houston to just jump in and make the move earlier than missing out on something later. Now I know we talked about players to watch. I think you said we discussed Pete Crow Armstrong. There was another player here before we discuss a little bit deeper and go into our next team and final team. But Nico Horner, I don't know if we talked much about him. What is your thought on Nico Horner? Do you like him this season? Do you expect him to have a better, improved offensive season?
I do. My worry with him is he's such a good defensive player that if he can put together a year where he's hitting 25 home runs, he's getting 40 doubles, getting on base, hitting like second for that lineup right in front of Kyle Tucker, that scares the crap out of me as a Cardinal fan because he's one of those guys that you really aren't even counting on offensively. And I think a lot of these guys just do everything well. That's the problem is once you have a guy who, hits for power but never takes walks, never steals bases. The Cubs have 3, 4, 5 guys. Everyone hits a little bit. Everyone can explode at any time. Anyone can hit a home run. Everyone can steal bases. That's kind of the reason that both the Brewers and the Cubs scare me this year is they just have these depth guys that are going to be, good at everything. They're not going to have, a part of their game that completely falls apart during the year.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. And looking at the projections here, we've got, again, Pacoda is projecting a 91 win season, and we got Fangraphs projecting about if I can find it here, my standings here, it is 84 wins. So another big difference between the two. I'm not sure exactly why some of these are somewhat. I mean, that's a big margin when you're looking at wins for overall in the season. So I think if everything goes right for the Cubs this season, if they can stay healthy, if they get a big year from Tucker, the rotation stays healthy, I think they probably win about 87, 88 games. I think that's going to be their high. I don't see them getting to 90. I don't think they're that good of a team to win 90. But I do think if everything goes right, 87, 88 goes exactly their way. So if I were to predict this, I would say the over, but I could absolutely see them still running into some issues at times, and I could see it being an 84 win team still winning the division in what I think is a weaker division.
I'm going to say because of the rotation, I'm going to take the under on the wins this year.
Okay. Under on the wins for the Cubs. And I was trying to find on my sportsbook app here as I'm kind of navigating through this website. I was trying to find the over/under on Kyle Tucker's home run prop. I just for some fun, we can predict what we would think for this. Let's see if I can find it. Over/under home runs.
Man, I'm looking at your Zips projections there. OPS plus 100 is average. I see Nico Horner 101, Swanson 98, Happ 116, Michael Busch 111, Matt Shaw 100. I mean, if they're getting that kind of average plus hitting from their role guys with good defense, that does scare me a little. I mean, if Tucker has a great year, if Pico Armstrong, actually, oh my God, if he has like a Jackson Cheerio season that, of last year,
yes,
that offense could be scary. I think it'd be one of those teams where the rotation just has to hold up a little bit, and that offense could kind of support the entire team all year long.
Definitely. I'm not finding it here. Here we go. I'm looking at the easiest access I had here was on DraftKings, and I believe I'm trying to find Kyle Tucker. Here we go. So they have 30 home runs for the 30 plus. I don't know if there's like an actual over under. I'm going to have to navigate through some of these apps and actually give it. So
what are the odds on 30 plus?
So 30 plus, it's juiced to minus 155.
Oh, wow. So they think more than 30.
Yes, I think more than 30. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And you could, if you're very high on Kyle Tucker this season, you could make this bet because at 35 plus home runs, they have his odds at plus one. Where was it? I just had it here. Plus 150 is his current odds for over 35 home runs. So, Sean, if you had to say, I know it's juiced to over to the 30 home runs. Would you take the over under at 35 plus 150?
That's a great question. Lefty at Wrigley. Don't they have that new scoreboard out in right field these days?
Don't forget, guys. Okay, Sean, you know this. Our group chat knows this. I am the biggest hater on that basket because do you know how many home runs some of these players hit when they just pop up in the basket? I think there's been a lot of cheap home runs at Wrigley. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of home runs, they fully get blasted out of there. We all know that. But if you watch baseball and you see sometimes those home runs that literally fall in that basket, because if you look at the basket, it is hanging over the wall. Like, I don't think some people may not realize that unless you're really digging deep into these like player props and stuff because I always am like, well, a pop fly at Wrigley could go out because it's going to just go into that basket. So I always remember they have a basket that's leaning over and could potentially be a home run.
Man, it's crazy. I remember when Chris Bryant won his MVP, he was the exploding player. I think I had him in fantasy that year, so I was all happy. And I remember you talking to me after the year, and you were like, man, every fucking home run I watched of that guy landed in the basket. Like every single one landed in that basket. I was like, what? No way, no way. And then I saw a Sports Illustrated article about how many home runs that land in the basket, over some amount of years. And it was insane. It was insane. They showed the gap of how many home runs would have been hit at Wrigley with or without the basket. And I'm sure it's some crazy amount, just like every place. If you lowered the defensive foot, I'm sure it'd be different. I don't know all the numbers, but I was like, man, that there is something about that. You hit a ball in the air, the wind's blowing out. It just has to go right in that basket. It's a home run every time.
Dude, it's crazy. I saw it so many times. Those Chris Bryant pop fly home runs, just unbelievable. But really quick, answer that question. Over under 35 home runs. What are you saying?
Okay, this is not my cardinal bias coming into effect. I'm going to take the under on 35.
Okay.
What about
under
you?
35.
Pose the same question to you.
Man, I would say
I know you're high on Tucker this year.
I know I'm high on Tucker. I mean, fully healthy. I'm going to say he hits like 37. I'm going to say 37.
How many did he hit last year?
Let's see. Let me pull up his 24 stats. Kyle Tucker.
I'm gonna guess 31. Oh yeah. Oh, he had that shin injury last year.
He had a shin injury, so he missed a lot of time.
He had like a bruise on his shin. He missed over a month.
Yes. So we have Kyle Tucker last season missed a lot of the year. 23 home runs he hit.
How many games did he play?
He played in, I have it right here as well. He had 277 at bats.
Oh.
So total games, he had 78 games. Wow, he missed that much time. Damn. Wow. But no, look at this though. Take last year away. In 2023, he played in 157 games, which is crazy. That's a lot of games. He only hit 29 home runs. Interesting. And then he played 150 in 2022. He hit 30. And then in 2021, he hit 30. So, wow, he's never hit over 31 home runs in a year. That's surprising.
Yeah, but last year, if you take it, how many games you say? 77 games?
78.
So 78. So double that. That's what, 156 or whatever. So that's not even a full year. And he's got what, 46, 45, 46?
Yep.
So
you're right.
So who knows? Who knows?
And I would say lefty and Wrigley, I think, would be better hitter friendly park for him than it was in Houston. So
Houston, for sure.
And I would say the pitching. If you compare the pitching, let really quick deep dive into that. Look at the Central Division pitching, and he's arguably has the best staff in the division. You're going to go up against guys in Cincinnati, so more hitter-friendly park in Cincinnati. You've got guys in Pittsburgh, Paul Skeens and everything, but the Brewers, I think there's a lot of potential for them. Yeah.
You're going to play Colorado more.
Yeah,
You're going to play Arizona more.
Oh, yeah. Yep. All right, well, great breakdown on the Cubs, and hopefully we can see our division rival not do as well, but it is what it is. All right. Well, the inevitable, the team that we know most, the St. Louis Cardinals, 11-time World Series champion, St. Louis Cardinals, let me tell you really quick. But a team who hasn't won since 2011, and that is way too long of a drought to go through with a team like St. Louis. A great baseball market, a team who we once were the model team in the majors. And unfortunately, we are somewhat of the laughing stock of Major League Baseball right now, which is sad to say. Front office, so inconsistent. Ownership, who freaking knows? We went into the offseason. They did their press conference. They said, we are retooling. We're shredding payroll, blah, 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 blah. It's going to look a lot different. We're not going to be good. You know what they did in the offseason? They didn't pick up team options for Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, okay, $10 million, whatever. That's not shredding payroll as much as you want to say it is. And then they let Paul Goldschmidt walk. Okay, great. Wow, Paul Goldschmidt walked. You weren't expecting to sign him anyway. That's all they really did. Okay, they didn't trade Nolan Arenado. That's what their number one priority was. Didn't trade Nolan Arenado. And they're running it back from last year. At the end of the day, they're running it back from last year when they told us it's going to look a lot different. Well, Sean, we have 2025 on our hands. A lot of people are down on the Cardinals. Look at that. If you look at all the odds across the board, we are projected to finish in last in some of these sports books, and 75.5 is where they have our over under.
Yeah.
On 2025 St. Louis Cardinals, tell me, how do you feel about them coming into the year?
Well, let me tell you something I did the other day. I went to my bank account. I withdrawed about $2,000. I walked up to the DraftKings sports window. I said I want $2,000 on futures St. Louis Cardinals World Series champions 2025. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, pump the brakes, buddy. I know you're a fan, but.
So here's my thing. Here's my general feel as we're going to talk more about the team. I think what's made us so frustrated as fans, especially 2 years ago when they won, what was it, 74 games or 72 games?
I think 72, yeah.
Every year, and of course, we won the division when Pujols came back. We won the division in 2019. We went on that, huge win streak that got us to the postseason, yada, yada. Every single year, from pretty much 2014, 2015 on, there was this pompous attitude from the front office of, we're going to be fine. We have a great team. We're going to let Paul DeJong dominate at shortstop. We're not going to change the team. We're not going to sign a big guy. We have a great team. There was this dishonesty with the front office to the fans of what we're doing as a team. No prospects were hitting at all. We had a 10-year stretch where, I don't know, was Colton Wong the best prospect to come out of that stretch? I couldn't tell you. So what's the only thing different coming into this year is, instead of that pompous, oh, we're fine, we're going to win the division with what we have, this is one of the first off seasons where there's more honesty of what the team is, what we're going to do, what we're trying to do. Of course, they didn't do anything, of course. But I think what I like about the team is, instead of saying, we have a 76 win roster, but we're going to win 87 games. No, what the message is now is, our roster is not what we want it to be. But this is a year we're going to retool, and we're going to just play as many young guys as we can. We're probably not going to sign anybody, over the offseason. We're not going to trade away prospects for a big guy, even if we're 500 or whatever, late in the year. But there's some comfort in that. I see a lot of positives with the team, even in this retooling year. I think of Marlins fans. I think of Pirates fans. I think of Rockies fans, and every year just think they're in a rebuild every single year, and they still don't have players that are as good as our rebuilding guys. So it gives me some sense of comfort that there's finally an admission of what this roster is, what we're trying to do. I like that John Mozeliak says he's going to step down after this year. I'm interested to see how that all works out. So I'll say that's a very broad theme of the year. That doesn't talk about any of the actual roster or performance. But I like, if this is truly a rebuild year, then I think this team actually, in a fun way, has a who the hell cares, screw it mentality the whole year. Imagine if this team goes out, wins 85 games, gets a wild card. That's going to be one hell of a year. If we end up winning 71 games, I'm not going to be sad. I'm going to be, disheartened that we are like this now and that it's a rebuilding year, but it's not going to kill me as it would, like that year did 2 years ago when we came into the year expecting to compete for the division and we were worthless for the first 3 months.
Love it. And I completely agree with a lot of what you said. What I'll say is, and my theory, so for people that don't know, my theory on the Cardinals front office in this offseason is, we usually get a lot of we'll see where we are, blah blah blah. It's always a lot of just unanswered questions and a lot of maybes and we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they straight up said in the offseason, it's retooling. We're not going to be. They basically said we're not going to be good next year. And in a way, because of how this offseason played out, in a way, I feel like that was them saying, okay, sure, we may not be great this year, but we have the potential to be good. So why not go into this offseason? Yeah, we're going to work on some things. We're going to change some things at the minor league level, development level, etc. All of that. But you know what? Our ceiling is still high in a way because we have a lot of young players who can do well. But we're not going to go out there and say we're going to win the division. We're going to try to sign some key pieces in the offseason. I think they're kind of banking on this to be a big rebound from the offense. I really do. If you look at this lineup, I will say this, and this is not my bias coming here. I think there truly is an upside to the offense. And that's a big, again, what if? Can these guys actually click and play to their potential? Look, Jordan Walker is a big time prospect. There's a lot of good things to say about him. If he can just figure it out at this level, he goes out there and hits over 20 home runs this season, gets on base a lot. If he's a main part of that lineup, this could be a different team. If we get a similar Mason win, if we get an Arenado bounce back, Wilson Contreras stays healthy, again, a lot of what ifs, but I think the ceiling, more than any team that is considered bad in this division, I think the Cardinals have the highest ceiling, and I don't think it's really even close. I didn't even mention Nolan Gorman. If he could just figure out how to not strike out every time he comes up, and he can find some consistency in his offense, there's upside. There really is. The ceiling is high. I'm not saying they're going to go out there and win the division. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but I feel like 75.5 feels too low, and I think there's a little bit of disrespect to that.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. I'll say this. How about this? You tell me right now, try to put your bias aside. Projections love Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner more middle infield. Who would you take right now? Mason Wynn, Brendan Donovan, or I should say Donovan and Gorman platoon potentially, or Swanson and Horner, or is it too close to call? What would you say?
I think it's a lot closer than people would think. I think Mason Wynn.
Agree.
I think Mason Wynn definitely. I mean, his defense. I was very impressed with his defense last season, so that's a nice thing to have there. But I think he can definitely take a step to the next direction. Like he doesn't feel like that guy who's. Sometimes you worry about guys that go in a sophomore slump. I don't really see it with Mason Wynn. I think he's just got that attitude to him that he's going to continue to get better and he's going to improve year by year. So I'm pretty high on Mason Wynn. So I would personally take him over what's there. And then Nico Horner compared with, Donovan and Gorman, I think you could also make a comparison there as to it's pretty even. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, I don't think it's by a wide margin that those two players for the Cubs are better than Wynn and then the combination of Donovan and Gorman.
I think the big thing about the Cardinals is I think we've I don't see their hitters getting better at the major league level. That's kind of a big threat to these guys like Walker and Nootbaar going from these toolsy guys that have these this power, this contact, like Nootbaar, his first year up coming out of the minor leagues, he was the only guy in the league with top 95 percentile in chase rate, in walks, in Ks, and in contact percentage. And where has that been? I feel like it's just been injuries and excuses ever since. And I'm worried that has to do a lot with the MLB coaching in the front office. And I'd like to see that type of stuff change this year. I know some of the guys are reaching outside the organization to change some of their approach. I know some of the pitchers are going elsewhere. I know Palante last offseason, he was going to several different organizations. I think he was a driveline guy. He and look what kind of year he had last year. He kind of stepped up, which scares me about kind of the inner workings of the organization. But if we were able to upgrade any of those parts of the developmental side of the team, then there's a chance that Walker and Gorman and Nootbaar and Burleson, whoever else, Herrera, Pedro Pages, they could put together an offensive year that might sneak up on some people.
One thing I want to add onto everything that we're talking about here is going into the offseason, the front office reportedly approached Contreras, Sonny Gray. and neither of them wanted to waive their no trade clause, which I thought was really interesting because at that point in those, Sonny Gray, his point in his career, sure, maybe he wants to be comfortable. Maybe he really is comfortable in St. Louis. I think he's close to home from where he's from. But still, at a point, you would think that they want to be competitive and play for a good team. So Sonny Gray seems like he's like, yeah, we're not a bad team. And in some recent interviews, he said, what are you talking about? Like, we're not a terrible team. We're not going to go out there and be one of the worst teams of the division. So I think he has some confidence in this team. I think Wilson Contreras as well. And I think at the end of the day, where this team goes is how Nolan Arenado is. If Nolan Arenado can be, just be better than last season and the other year, he's obviously declining. He's not the same guy we saw hitting 30+ home runs a season. But I don't think that he's just this guy who's fallen off a cliff. He'll never be good again. I think there's still a bounce back potential season from him. And I think he has kind of hinted at that because of nobody wanting him in the offseason. Nobody wanted to make a trade for him. They don't want to pay a guy like him because they think he's too mediocre. So I think there's a little bit of extra motivation for Nolan Arenado to bounce back this season too. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think Arenado's the type of guy that emotions run, everything about the way he plays. And I think if there's a chance we can get hot in the beginning of the year, there's a chance that he kind of bounces back, has a better year than he has the last 2 years, which I would love as a fan. And, I have a question for you on the pitching side. Speaking of bounce back, I want to hear your opinion on what are you thinking for Michaelis and Matz this year at the back end of your rotation? Do you think there's a bounce back there, or are you pretty worried about those guys lasting the whole season?
So this is the most confused I am about the front office is they said they want to give younger players opportunities. Well, look at our rotation. It's Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, and Andre Palance. Like, that's majority of those guys are 34, 35 or older. So it's like, what are we doing? I don't have any confidence in Miles Michaelis. I mean, yeah, he's going to give you maybe one good start out of every 5, but majority of the time he's going to get hit hard. He's not a strikeout guy, and he's going to give up a lot of hard contact. So not feeling great about Miles Michaelis. I'm also not feeling great about Steven Matz. But, like, at what point do we just say to Steven Matz, all right, man, it hasn't worked out. We're going to either just throw you in the bullpen and you just give us whatever you have, or we're just going to simply DFA you and eat the money that we gave you because it was a horrible contract. So, yeah, I don't really have much confidence in them. I mean, the only thing that we can truly bank on is Steven Matz getting injured within the first 5 weeks. I mean, seriously, look at it. Steven Matz hasn't stayed healthy this entire contract, and when he comes back, it's going to be for 2 or 3 games. They're going to be scared. They're only going to give him 3 or 4 innings. Like, what are we – that's my question. What are we doing with Steven Matz? Why are we not just giving someone a chance at the minor league level? Like, I would much rather see McGreevy out there this season. Give me McGreevy. Give me some Quinn Matthews, the high upside there with him. Give me,
Tim Kentz.
Yeah. Like, if you truly want to see how these starters are, yeah, they may not be fully ready for the majors, but don't you want to at least get a feel for it? Give them some innings and stop throwing out Michaelis and Steven Matz. So, yeah, I don't want to see it. I'm saying here's what I would do if I'm a front office guy. I'm saying to Michaelis, I'm saying if by the end of May you are one of our worst pitchers, which is probably predicted, but if you're one of our worst pitchers and truly one of the worst pitchers in baseball by an ERA perspective, hard hit percentage, all that, and you're not putting the team in any position to win, then he's off my team. He's DFA'd, and we're putting him on the injured list to sit there and mentor players. We're bringing in a young starting pitcher to take his place. Like, we can't waste a full season on Miles Michaelis, in my opinion. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. I couldn't agree more. The only thing with sending Matz to the bullpen, which brings up another point, is putting another lefty in that bullpen. Man, the bullpen worries me a lot this year. I don't know where those back end of the game innings are going to come from. I'm really worried about Helsley this year. I don't know if you're higher on Helsley. I think he's had 2 healthy good years, which that just scares me for those relievers. I think all those guys in the bullpen with Thompson and all the middle relievers, they really haven't proved anything, in their short careers. And I don't know even if you put Steven Matz in the bullpen, if it's gonna take a lot of experimenting and matchups to make that bullpen really work this year, which that scares me a lot.
Yeah, last year was a great season for Ryan Helsley, so you have to worry and wonder how he's going to look in another season as the Cardinals closer. Another surprise that they didn't try to trade him if they were going in a different direction. But again, we didn't get a lot of the things they said was going to happen in the offseason. But yeah, I think there's.
But do you think JoJo Romero is going to have the same type of year?
That's the thing. No way. I would be shocked if JoJo Romero is as good as he was last year. Like what we got from him, Kittredge, and Helsley last year was probably why we finished over 500. We finished 83 and 79. Yeah. And I think there was a lot of one-run games we were winning because of that part of the bullpen. Like our pitching wasn't great at the start, but the bullpen came in and was, locking down games for the most part. So I think that's a great point. The bullpen, probably a big concern here is the regression potential for Ryan Helsley. You want to see more from Matthew Liberatore, but how much can you really get out of him? I mean, that's another question mark in our bullpen. Ryan Fernandez, Michael King. Yeah, there's a lot of question marks in the bullpen. So I think that is going to be another weak point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that worries me. I think the rotation in the bullpen, funny enough, just from the points you made about the ceiling on the offense, worries me a lot more than the position player group.
Now, we're going to be closing this out shortly, but we have a couple things to talk about in this Cardinals preview for 2025. There's one player you have to pick on this roster, whether it's in the starting rotation or in the lineup. Who do you like to truly have a breakout year, or at least just give a bigger positive to that player who you think is just going to show up this year and have some momentum?
So this is the most biased answer I got because I'm not sure in my heart I even believe it. But I think Jordan Walker is going to break out. I really do. I think he had such a good minor league, trip through the minor leagues. He did so good in AAA. I think, or AA, I should say, that he even got to skip AAA and come straight to the majors. I think he showed such promise, not just with some of his power, but some of his decisions at the plate. And, the more I watch interviews of the guy, his attitude is something that I just love about him and about even the group of outfielders. I think him and Nootbaar and Victor Scott have such a great camaraderie and attitude about, especially about the team as a whole, but especially their offensive approach. I really, really, really want to see Jordan Walker put the ball in the air, hit some more home runs, go to all sides of the field. His hard hit percentage, it's too good not to put up some type of numbers this year. I think he is going to have somewhat of a better offensive year than he's had. I think this is going to be his best offensive year so far. I want to see 20 home runs. I want to see him up third, fourth, fifth spot of this order. That's what this team is going to need. But if he does not, if he has another poor year, if he's still not the defensive guy they want in right field, man, that would be a real kick to the stomach. That is something that is just from what he was hyped up to be as a prospect. Man, I really hope this is the year of Jordan Walker, because if not, I don't know what the future of the team even looks like.
Truly, this makes our organization for the next 5 years. If Jordan Walker can give us the potential that we all know he has, this could put us in a good place for the future. I mean, if we can look at that right there too. I have his bio up. First round pick, 21st overall, 22 years old. He's got time to figure it out. I hope that it was just like a We brought him up. Maybe it was a little too early. Maybe he needed to figure some things out. Maybe he needed a couple more off seasons to truly get right. But man, the potential is there. We all know his ceiling. And if he can get there for this organization, they will be in a good place in the next, I would say, 2 or 3 years, maybe not 5. I would say even quicker. If Jordan Walker takes that next step and can get you to, 20, 25 home runs a year and just starts breaking out, be a lot of fun and pretty exciting as a Cardinals fan. And, I brought up the MLB Savant page for Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at
Mm-hmm.
the two things there. I know it's not always everything, but the average exit velocity is there. The barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, you've got bat speed. Like, those are all things you want to see from a really good player. And it's just now you got to put it all together and actually do it. So,
yeah, hover over that 2024 and see if we can go to 2023, because I want to see if you go up to that 2024 MLB percentile rankings at the top of that page there.
Yes. Let me do that really quick for you. 2023. There we go.
Yeah.
I just brought up 2023. Oops, it went back. Give me a second. Let me go back and make it where it stops there. There we go. Okay. 2023. It's there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, every scout in the league and all the prospect, publications were sky high on Jordan Walker. And I all I can do is hope that he goes out and has a great year. If you're a betting man, that's one player on the team that I have no idea what his totals are going to look like at the end of the year.
Yeah. It is an interesting one, but we definitely need Jordan Walker to be a breakout player for this team and to show up when we need him. But a guy that I want to talk about today, and my expectations, because we haven't really talked about him much, but I think what we saw last year from Burleson, I mean, just look at some of these numbers here. I think there was a stretch, and I'm not saying the best hitter in baseball by a wide margin, but there was like a stretch where he was putting up some really good numbers. I don't know if it was like 3 or 4 weeks. So that's really not a super strong sample size, but I think what we saw out of Alec Burleson last year was pretty damn strong. And you see, he was drafted in the second round there, 70th overall, 26 years old. So I think there's a lot of potential for Burleson. He sprays. Look at that sprays chart there, man. He hits to the opposite side of the field. He hits to the direction of his field. He seems like when he's all right and he's together, he's hitting all over the field. So that's my guy this year that I want to see, take that step in a bigger direction. Is we need Alec Burleson to do what he did last year, but take it to another level. I mean, 21 home runs last year was great for a guy like Burleson, but if he can get us to 25, just under 30, if he's driving people in when we need to, if he's just getting all those hits, he doesn't strike out a lot. Look at that strikeout percentage there. This is another kind of guy that I want to see take the next step. And if Burleson can do that, I think this team could be a lot better than people are expecting.
Yeah. No, man, there was a stretch last year where Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson and Kittredge and Romero and Helsley, I mean, there was an entire month where, they were the whole team. They were the entire team. I know Sonny Gray, had a good year last year, but that's not the team we need this year. We need everybody in that lineup, 1 to 9. I would love to see Victor Scott start getting on base a little more. I want to see Newbar have a full, healthy season. The one thing we can talk about before we break is, what do you think about the catching scenario this year with Pa Hayes being the more defensive guy, and then Ivan Herrera, which, man, last year pretty decent year offensively. They are even hyping him up even more this year. They said he had an amazing offseason. Said he bulked up a little bit this offseason. I think our little catching duo could be one of the sneakiest in the division, if not the National League.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. And the way I want to see them play it here is I want Ivan Herrera to get majority of the reps. I think he has the most potential between the two. Sure, Pajes is probably the better defensive, but is he truly keeping runners away from stealing bases? No, not in my opinion. But Ivan Herrera, you got to keep that bat in the lineup. And how do you keep that bat in the lineup? You have to play him at catcher. And we all know, this is not Yadier Molina. We're not getting a defensive Yadier Molina from either of these two players. So if it means a little bit of a rough defensive, style from one of these two players, it is what it is. Like, that's just the nature of what it's become. But yeah, man, I think we got to go with Ivan Herrera. I think he's got to be the majority of the starts at catcher. And then, I don't hate in late innings if you really want to take him out and put in Pages because he's a better, catcher in those categories and, in terms of blocking the balls and all that, then fine, like, whatever. But Ivan Herrera, I'm very excited to see what he can do in a full season. Again, if a guy like him can have big numbers offensively and you got to keep that bat in the lineup, I'd be excited to see what he can do for a full season.
I think the more I talk about the Cardinals, I look at Herrera having a big year. I look at Burleson or whoever, they're going to start at first having a big year. I look at Gorman and Donovan, have a good, consistent year. Everyone's staying healthy. Newpar having a good year. Wynn having a good year. Arenado stepping up. Jordan Walker taking that next step. And then Sonny Gray and Eric Fetty, and then even guys like Quinn Matthews and T. Kent's to come in there, pitch over 100 innings, dominate some of these major league hitters. I could see this Cardinal team – I could, you don't have to wave a wand or sprinkle pixie dust over my eyes to see how this team could win 85, 89 games. My only worry is I think what we saw last year, we have like 5-6 guys that are all kind of above average. Okay, what happens when 4 of them suck for 3 months and one of them pops like a Mason Wynn? Then your offense really is not anything close to what you expected it to be, which is exactly what happened last year.
Yep, that's where we got to get away from, is that average type season for some of these players. And if they can take the next step, that's why I said at the beginning of this preview for the Cardinals was I don't think there's a higher ceiling for any of these players when I consider like the bad teams. Like if you're going to bring the Reds, Pirates, and Cardinals all together, I don't think it's close that the Cardinals have the higher ceiling of all those teams because of the potential our offense has to it. So yeah, you'd like to see some of these guys break out, man. If they can do it, if they can figure some things out and be better, I think this could be a lot more fun of a season in St. Louis than some fans or people are expecting around baseball.
I agree. So if you're looking at this right now, 75.5 wins. What is your final season prediction? I'm
truly, and I'm serious. I guess when I say this, I always do my 100% best to not be biased when I make these predictions. So I do truly believe they're better than 75.5 wins. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can go to the point and say they're going to be so good that they make the playoffs and find a wild card spot. But like you said, Sean, I wouldn't be shocked. Like if it got to that point where these guys are playing great baseball, they're scoring runs, the pitching is decent enough, the bullpen's not horrible, I wouldn't be shocked if they win 84, 86 games and find a way to get in the playoffs. So but I would take the over and wins. I think that would be one of my favorite bets of these prop bets in the division is over 75.5. I just feel like that's way too low.
Yeah. And just the culture about it all too. I mean, there's something about the Cardinals winning 74 games and there's something about the Pirates winning 74 games. And, one of those things hardly ever happens and hasn't happened except for one time in the last 20 years. So I agree. In fact, I don't want to be biased because I hate betting on my bias, but I think that's something I'm going to hammer too this offseason is I think if the bullpen can just hold up a little bit and one of these offensive guys can take the next step, I think they're going to compete for the division. It might be an ugly year. They might end up in 3rd place, 4th place by the end of the year. But if the Cardinals are 500 in June, are you going to be shocked?
Not at all. I will not be shocked at all. And looking at their schedule, just because we're kind of talking about it here, they start at home this year. Opening day will be against the Minnesota Twins. And then they will host the Los Angeles Angels. They'll go to Boston, Pittsburgh, play Philly, Houston, at the Mets, at the Braves versus the Brewers, and then at the Reds. So somewhat of a pretty competitive start to the season, but I think it's something that you want to see if they can get out to a nice start, finish the month of April. I don't know exactly how many games they're playing, but usually we'll say between March and April, they're going to start with 30. I would say a great start for us would be, to give me some hope, I would say about I'm trying to do this on the spot here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So out of 30 games, I'm going to say, like, if they can go 16 and 14, I really think that could put us, like, that would give me some confidence. If we can be 2 games above 500 after, I would feel pretty good about the season. If we're anything under that by a wide margin, then I'll have some concerns. But my hope is that we can start well.
It's crazy. I just feel like if you put any of these studs that we've been talking about on the Cardinals, you put a Kyle Tucker on the Cardinals, you put even like a Hunter Green on the Cardinals, man, I love the outlook of the team 10 times more. It sucks to have no MVP candidates. Goldschmidt's gone. It's something that I'm not used to as a fan.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So hopefully it's a better season in St. Louis. I know a lot of fans have been frustrated with the direction of the team, and it'll definitely be interesting to see how the seats are filled, if at all, this season. That's a big question too, because we've seen a lot of people. We watch Cardinals Twitter a lot, and we know there are a lot of frustrated fans out there who don't want to show up and support this front office and ownership. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
All right, Sean. Well, we just went through 5 teams in the National League Division, the National League Central Division, I should say. And we went through who we like, over-unders, players. We give a lot of information out today that maybe the average baseball fan doesn't know as much about. And if you, like I said, you like baseball, maybe you will enjoy watching this. But one thing I want to end us with here is, of all the teams, and you can use the Cardinals, I can care less. That's your team. So I want you to take who you think out of all of these teams. No Cubs, because they can't be a sleeper. Everyone else has pretty good odds to win the division compared to what I'm showing here at the bottom. Who would you take? If you had $100, you're going to the sports book, you have nothing to lose. Who do you think has the most potential to give you a return of those 4 teams outside of the Cubs?
So here's the thing. I'm going to take the Brewers. And it's not just going to be at 82, 83, whatever the line is. I think what's crazy about the Brewers is they could have a down year. Yelich could get hurt, yada, yada, yada. Woodruff might not show up. I think that if the puzzle pieces match, I mean, to me, the Pirates would have to literally O'Neill Cruz and Brian Reynolds would have to I don't know how that team is going to win 90 games. I don't even see how that's possible. Same with the Reds. But the Brewers, there's a way that their team can line up, their rotation can line up, and all these guys can pop to where not only would I take the over with good odds, I would try to adjust my line even higher, and I would love to even see what if you could get 89.5, 91.5 over on the Brewers team this year, just because they've proven every single year that the number that you put on them to start the year really doesn't matter that much. And with some of their young guys, it's kind of scary as a Cardinal fan to see, what they could become. And I think not only would I take their over season long, but I would see what adjusted number I could get.
I like that, Sean. I do. I think there's definitely, so as a sports betting perspective here, take away everything else, I think the Brewers have great value to win the division for the roster and everything we talked about. Great value, in my opinion. Like, at this point, I don't think there's any value in betting the Cubs. Unless you're 1,000% sure that everything is going to go right for the Cubs. Plus 125, I'm good. I don't want to lay that. But plus 400, 4-1 with the Brewers, yeah, I would take that. I think the Brewers have a lot of potential there. The only other team, I think there's potential for the Cardinals, like I said, but the only other team I would say is if you truly get like MVP seasons from Ellie De La Cruz and Hunter Green and they stay fully healthy, I think there's some decent value with the Cincinnati Reds too, just because of those 2 players. They can impact a team and make you that much better. So I would also throw the Reds in there as a little fun division sleeper who I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, the Reds won the division. That wouldn't shock me at all. Would I be shocked if the Pirates won the division? Absolutely. No chance I would think the Pirates win this division. So, yeah, I think we pretty much align there on those two. All right, man. Well, good stuff. Lots of fun. Thank you to everyone. So I'm going to be posting this as soon as I am able to. I'm going to edit some things, and then I'm going to post this. So for anyone who wants to continue watching us, we're going to be trying to do like a division preview week by week. So we did the National League Central this week. We're going to try to do another division next week and so on until the start of Major League Baseball season. And then during the season, my hope is that we can continue doing like one of these a week. And then on Twitter/X, we would like to try to do some spaces. So like day of the game previews of certain games. Like, we may not be betting on every game, but we might give you some thoughts on player props or teams that we like for that night, over-unders, etc. There's a lot of ways you can bet baseball, and I feel like we both have a lot of great knowledge in that, and we enjoy it, and we're going to help people out too in that area. So I think there's a lot of excitement for this 2025 season, and I think we can continue doing some fun things together.
Yeah, man. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean, for coming on here to do this YouTube live. I know it's busy at this time of the year for a lot of things, but thanks for finding some time. One last thing I have to ask you, spring training. You've been to spring training in Jupiter for the Cardinals. Just tell me really quick before we close it out here, what is one of the best things to do when you go to spring training, or what was the best experience you had going to spring training? Because I've never been. So can you tell somebody who's never been to spring training what was one of the coolest things or one of your best experiences?
So one of the cool things to do is before the games start. So right now, like right now, this week, maybe this past weekend, this whole week, going into next week, one of the coolest things to do is go down there before the games start. Because once the games start, what happens is some of the starters play a couple innings and then they go to the backfield, maybe go home, maybe go to the complex, whatever. What's cool about these first 2-3 weeks when the games are not going on there at Roger Dean is everyone's playing everyone in the backfield. So you could have Arenado facing Quinn Matthews. You could have Sonny Gray, Ivan Herrera, talking about things even as they're taking at bats against each other, and you're right there on the fence looking the entire time. It's really, really, really cool. The other cool thing, get there early if you go to a game down there, because everyone warms up in and around the complex. You see guys are walking just from, maybe one of the backfields here. You can see them right through the fence. Arenado could walk right in. You're just right there on all the star players. It's really cool to watch.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. So I'd love to get down there sometime for spring training. I've been to the complex, but it was during the season and there was nothing going on. So yeah, I'd love to get down there sometime for spring training. I hear it's a lot of fun, and you can kind of get more of a feel for everything because you're so much closer than maybe you are at the ballpark at the major. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that. But yeah, like I said, we'll be here as much as we can during the season. We'll give you as many previews as we can. So hopefully our knowledge here can help you. And look, we're not going to be right about everything. I think baseball can be very unpredictable. And so we'll be right about some things. We'll be really off about some things. So hopefully more right about the Cardinal side of it. So looking forward to a fun season. I'm excited for it. Thank you to everybody for watching. And as always, please help us subscribe. I'm trying to build my YouTube channel. So try to subscribe to us. If you like more baseball content, hit subscribe on our channel, and we'll give you as much more information as we can throughout the season.